Hi, everybody. Welcome in. Happy Tuesday. I hope you're having a wonderful week so far. It's only Tuesday. I know it's not a very good measure of your week, but I mean, we did make it through Monday, so that's a bonus, right? Hi, Debbie. Hi, Mary. Gina's here. Nicole's here. Hello, hello. Hi, Tanya. How are you? Patricia is here. Just going to scroll back here because lots of chatter in the comment section. Hey, Gail. How are you? Hi, Jackie. Welcome in, everybody. Hi, Bonnie. So, hey, Gina, how was your weekend? Did you have a good one? Mine was not long enough. Mine was absolutely not long enough. And I know you guys doesn't really matter, but I like to complain because, I'm a normal human being. It's nice to have somebody to complain to, but I have this horrible, horrible pain down the back of my neck into my shoulder. And I don't know if I have a nerve twisted or I don't know what the problem is, but y'all, it's really hard to sit here like this because you know how when you're working, you work with your head down. It's really hard to sit here with my head down and work. I worked through it all day yesterday, but by the time I went to bed last night, oh my gosh, it was hurting up into the back of my head. So I don't know what's going on. I think it's just because I spend so much time in this chair and it is really starting to catch up to me. I used to have a massage therapist that came on a regular basis, but I haven't done that in a very, very long time. I might need to go back to that. But if anybody has any recommendations, I would love to know how to fix that because it is definitely making life a little difficult around here. Right? Have somebody stand there and press on the knot. I can't figure out exactly where the knot is, though. That's why I'm like, well, maybe it's a nerve or something because I can't, I can find tender spots, but it doesn't feel like a knot, which when I get those in my back, I can usually feel them. It's just like a hard spot, but I don't know. It's rough. It's rough. I don't know. Acupuncture. I do have some essential oils that usually help. I had been using the essential oils on my wrist and it really helped, but this is such a weird spot. I don't know. I just don't like it and I needed to share with you all. So thanks for humoring me by letting me complain about my aches and pains. I know that there are worse things in the world. But if I seem a little stiff, that's what's going on. It just hurts, man. It just hurts. All right. So today we are working with Gollum style beads. Now, even if you don't have any Gollum style beads, I'm willing to bet that you will or have come across either you have them in your stash right now, or you have something similar, or you will in the future have a ceramic bead or a bead in general that has a large hole, and that can be really kind of frustrating to figure out what to do with. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, because there are so many different ways that you can kind of troubleshoot the large hole bead on a Gollum style bead, but it also works with other large hole beads as well. So even if you don't have Gollum beads, as I said, maybe you'll come across or have some in your stash that have a large hole that maybe you need to kind of figure out what it is that you're going to do with it. So we are going to put together a bracelet today, but the bracelet is really straightforward and really easy. What I really want to focus on more than anything is the large hole and some of the different ways that we can kind of help to stabilize the bead on our stringing material. So I've got a couple of ideas, and then of course I know that you guys in the comments will have tons of suggestions as well. So that's what today is all about. I want all the suggestions, all the things that you know about dealing with large hole beads so that we can help other people in our community who don't really know what to do with those large hole beads. So that's what we're going to do, and we are going to put together a bracelet. But first things first, we are going to look at Gollum beads. Then we're going to look at just individual ways before we start to actually incorporate them into a project. So that's the plan. That's the plan. Anything I need to tell you guys before we get started? Let me think. I got my bargain bead box in the mail. I will be doing that. Let me get my calendar out because I got a couple of other things to tell you guys about as well. Okay, so today's the 10th. All right, next Tuesday, the 17th, we will be doing our bargain bead box project. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but I have really enjoyed going through this bargain bead box to see what it looks like. And then the week after that, I have something very special for you guys that I think you're going to be excited about. So get ready. 2 Good Tuesdays coming up back to back. Also, don't forget to set your reminders for Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern for our Feel Good Friday show, and 4 p.m. Eastern for my Art Beads Live over on artbeads.com. Let's see. Anything else? Yes. Patreon. Patreon is open for enrollment anytime you would like to be a Patreon subscriber. I just worked on the Patreon project yesterday. I will be filming it and uploading it probably on Thursday. I know I had been in the habit of doing Mondays, but now that my schedule is a little weird, I've got a lot of weird things. It's summertime, you know, like I've got a kid home and she's got her own schedule going on. And so, it looks like Thursdays are probably going to be our Patreon days. Not that there's actually a real set schedule for that, but just in case you were curious. But I do have Patreon open for enrollment anytime. You can be anywhere in the world and you can be any kind of user, whether you're Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, whatever. Patreon is open for enrollment for anybody. And with Patreon subscription, you get an additional 3 projects from me a month that you're not going to see anywhere else. They're exclusive to Patreon members only. So if that sounds like something you would be interested in, I would love for you to join. Patreon is all about fun, beautiful jewelry using things I already have in my stash, and I encourage you to do the same thing. This week's Patreon project is one where I had a baggie. I had a baggie of things that I had put together to create something with, and then I never did it. And then I found the baggie. So it's those kinds of things that inspire the Patreon project. So hopefully it inspires you with things that you've got in your own stash. So, all right, friends, let's get into it, shall we? We are going to be talking about, as I mentioned, these Gollum style beads that have a large hole, but they are not the only large hole beads that exist in the universe. There are tons of large hole beads. And so hopefully this will help you troubleshoot using large hole beads in your designs. So I'm going to turn you around. We're going to get started. Let's do it. Okay. So let's just take a look at Gollum style beads. For those of you who might not be super familiar with them, I have a bit of a collection. I've only got 4 of them out here that I'm going to show you, but I have a lot of these. They come in a lot of different sizes, and you can actually get Gollum style pendants as well, but we're focusing on the beads themselves because there's a couple of things about these large hole beads that make them a little bit more difficult to deal with. And that is because not only is it a large hole for the bead, but look at the way that that hole is shaped, right? It's not exactly a flush hole. So like if you've got a large hole bead, let me see if I've got something here that I can compare this to up here on my shelf. I don't think that I do. But because of the lintel shape of this, right, it's not quite a coin bead because it's puffed out a little bit. So this is what is considered a lintel. And because of that, it means that the hole, it's flush this direction along the seam line, but it is dipped in on the front and the back. So that makes it a little bit more challenging to deal with than if you were just dealing with a large hole bead that the opening was flush. Does that make sense? I really wish I had something that I could show to you. Let's see. I think I do. Hold on. Let's see. I don't even know. Oh, this will work. All right. So this is another large hole bead, right? And you can see how this large hole bead, the whole opening is pretty much flush with the side of the bead, right? This, not so much, right? It looks like it from head on, but when you look at it from the side, you have this like dip down. That creates a little bit of a challenge for a lot of people because unless you have just kind of made peace with the way that that looks, you're really going to kind of struggle with it because you're going to be like, well, no matter what I do to it, it just doesn't look right. It just doesn't look like I want it to look. It doesn't look like a seamless bead. One of the first things that I can tell you is that you probably should try to find a way to make peace with the fact that it just looks different. This is a different kind of bead, right? It is just not the same thing when working with it, and that is because of the special way that it is drilled. Now I'm going to show you another bead. So this is not a Gollum style bead, but just to show you that this happens in more handmade ceramics than anything. This is a Damiana Studios bead, And it is also a ceramic, obviously not a Gollum, but it's the same thing, right? It's the same way. You have that dip because of the way that the bead is shaped. So it doesn't work the same way. So you can make it flush with something and sit it right on top of there, but you still have that little window that you can see, that little opening of daylight between there. So even if you set something right on top of it, you're still going to have a little bit of that showing. And for some people, it's really, really frustrating, and it makes life difficult when they are creating. However, if you can make peace with that and just accept that that's just kind of one of the quirks of a Gollum style bead, it makes life a whole lot easier. But we're going to talk about ways to try to make it less obvious. So let's do that, shall we? And again, just to kind of show you, they come in different sizes. So this is a Gollum bead, but it's just a little bit smaller, right? Just a little bit smaller. But this is the one that we're going to be using in our project. So I'm going to be using wire with it. I'm going to kind of save that until we move into that actual project. But we can talk about with some of the other ones here, just some different ways that we can handle this. So when we are threading these beads onto things, first and foremost, unless you're using a large hole or a large thread of some variety, like some sort of thick stringing material, then obviously this bead is going to wiggle around on whatever you're using, right? So for this thinner wire, it is not stable. For your bead stringing wire, it's going to be the same thing. So there are a couple of things that you can do to make this a little bit more stable. So one of the things that I like to do and that other people do is use smaller beads to fill up the inside. And I have seen people suggest using seed beads. I have seen people suggest using like bugle beads, just because they can kind of clear more space. But when you're using seed beads, this is probably the worst eye pin to be using. Here, let's try this one because it had a spot on the end of it. When you're using seed beads, finding the right size seed bead is also really helpful, because a couple of things that you need to take into consideration is, number one, the seed bead needs to fit inside, but needs to be big enough to kind of help stabilize. So there's kind of like a sweet spot when it comes to using a seed bead. First of all, you need to use enough beads that are going to clear the inside of that. Then you kind of need to decide, okay, do I want the seed beads to stick out the ends or not? So let's take a look at that. So we're going to fill this wire up with some seed beads. Okay. And then we're going to thread our Gollum bead on top of that. Now, I can either have it so that you can see that little seed bead right there. See how the seed bead is just like peeking through at the end? Or I can have so many seed beads that it doesn't even matter. Now, these seed beads are a little on the small side, just being honest with you. These are a little bit on the small side for me. So this is a size 11, which is what a lot of people have and use. I think a size 8 is probably a little bit better. We're going to look at size 8s here in a second, but you got to decide. It's still going to kind of wobble because the seed beads are a little small, but do you want that seed bead to be completely hidden like that, right? Where just the wire is poking out? Or does it matter to you? Do you want that seed bead to stick out? Now, the reason that I bring that up is because with these size 11s, if you let the seed bead stick out, it's still pretty small, right? It's obvious that it is not quite big enough. And you can see the seed beads, depending on how you're looking at this project, you can actually see those seed beads going through that bead. So that drives you crazy. That might not be the answer. The size 11s might be a little on the small side. So let's bring in a size 8 and see how that looks in comparison to that. So let me grab, and maybe even size 10. I know not everybody has size 10 seed beads. It's kind of an odd size, but all right. So I have some size 8s here. We're going to use the size 8s and see if that makes a difference. You can actually use a combination of both. You can put the size 11s through the inside and then put the 8s on the ends. But sometimes the drill hole on these is not big enough for the 8. It is for this. So this one's good. So I'm going to use some 8s here. And this will work whether it is wire or bead stringing wire. So it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? The main thing is just stabilizing the bead in a way that makes you happy with the way that it looks. Now, again, you can have your seed bead sticking out. If your seed bead is sticking out like that, you can almost have it completely flush, or as close to flush as you can get it with a Gollum bead. This is most of the times what I will go for, right? Because it's not exact, right? But it does visually make this as flush as possible. And if you will use a size 8 seed bead that is similar to either the metal that you're using or the color of the bead in that section. So if I had like this really cool, like teal blue color for a seed bead, it from a distance, it would look seamless, right? I mean, you'd really have to be looking to see whether or not there was a bead there. So if you like that look where it looks, you know, it looks as seamless as possible, I think size 8 seed beads are really going to be your best bet. There are other things though. If this is still not something that you want to do, I get it. That's fine. I do like this option very, very much. It's one of my favorite things to use. It just seems most of the time to be just the right size. Okay, so if that doesn't work, you always have the option of using bead caps. Now, a couple of things are going to happen with bead caps, and this is where people get kind of frustrated because the bead cap looks nice, but there are some limitations with that because the bead cap is curved and your bead is not. It has that funny shape to it, that lentil shape. So when you put a bead cap on, it's not going to do anything except just sit on the edge, right? No matter how hard you try, it's going to sit on the edge. Now, this can work in conjunction with your size 8 seed beads. You can put a size 8 seed bead in there and then pop your bead cap over the top of it, and you don't see the seed bead nearly as much. But if you just stick with a larger bead cap, it looks great from the sides, but you still have that little hint of daylight and your bead is still pretty wobbly. So what I like to do when it comes to seed bead, or I'm sorry, bead caps, is I like to use a small bead cap. And I use it in the opposite direction. So you can see my little bead cap here, and this is a very specific style of seed bead. It's not necessarily the style so much as the way that this bead cap is created. See how it has like how it has a little lip, a little ring of metal, and then the cap part. That helps because this little ring section will fit down inside there. Not perfectly, but pretty close. But you got to thread it on backwards because you want that to sit inside the hole. So you can see, and sometimes you can get them that'll fit just perfectly. Not always, but you can get it pretty darn close. So you can see how on one side it fits better than the other. That's just kind of part of ceramics in general. The drill holes on them are never going to be perfect every single time, but you can see on this side over here on the left, it fits right into that hole. Whereas over here on the right side, it does not. And you can still kind of see daylight between there. Now it will help though. It definitely will help to stabilize, particularly if you'll put a bead up against each one of these. So if you were going to put, I know this is the wrong size bead, but let's just pretend for a second. So if you put a bead right up against that, it definitely helps to stabilize your Gollum bead. But you have to have the pressure of a bead up against the bead cap in order for that to work. So I wouldn't just like put a bead cap in there and then, you know, put something small, like a little seed beater. Like you need a bigger bead to really kind of help to stabilize. Now, another thing that you can use for this is obviously a larger stringing material, right? Larger stringing materials are always really helpful because then you don't have to fuss with it nearly as much. And one of my very favorites to use is leather. So I love to take some leather. You can, Phyllis. Phyllis has a great question. She says, can't you bend your bead cap a little bit to make it fit better? You can. And it honestly, it just kind of depends on what your bead caps are made out of. Let me bring this one back in here that I was using, because some of them, this one is like, what is it called? This one is pewter. And the pewter will not bend. Like, this is a hefty bead cap. But if you've got a brass bead cap, you can slide your brass bead cap on there, and then you can bend it or kind of smush it into the shape of the side of your bead, and it will definitely make a difference. But it really is just kind of specific to what kind of bead cap you're using. This pewter, I definitely, like, I would have to do some major hammering to make that fit, whereas brass is a little bit softer. I can really kind of mold it to the edge of the bead. So yes, that is absolutely an option, 100%, and it's a really good option. There's a lot of the bead caps that I have in my stash are brass. So, okay. So now one of my, as I was mentioning, favorite things to do is just to use a thicker beading material. So obviously you can get up to about 2 to 2.5 millimeter leather through these holes. A 1 millimeter is a little too little. 1.5 millimeter is still pretty small. 2 millimeter, 2.5 millimeter, maybe even 3, depending on your drill hole, is going to really create a nice hold for your Gollum style bead. But the problem is like, okay, well, I don't want to do the rest of my design in leather, right? Because the rest of my beads don't have a large hole. So how am I going to incorporate this bead into my design? Well, I'm glad you asked, because there are some things that you can do, and you guys have seen me do a lot of these things. Actually, you can create just a little segment of your design. So for me, I like to create a little loop. Sometimes it's a big loop, sometimes it's a small loop. It really just depends, right? So I'll create a loop with my leather. I'm trying to find my green cutter. Where's my green cutter? Here it is. All right. And then I will add, obviously, a little bit of glue, depending on your leather. This leather is kind of slippery, so I definitely would put some glue down in my knot. But then I can trim that off. I can thread my bead on, and then I can do the same thing essentially on the other side. And now what I've done is I have created now, and you might not like that. If you use some glue, you can cut that little piece of leather completely off if you want to. Now I'm doing this without glue, so there's no guarantees that that's going to stay. But you can also tuck your ends inside the bead if you want to. But now I can do the same thing over here on the other side. It's a little tricky. You kind of have to work with it a little bit. I do suggest using a longer piece of leather so that you can really kind of manipulate your knot down next to your bead. But just kind of working with the leather and just being patient. You can create 2 loops on either side of your bead. And then with the loops, you have the opportunity to attach jump rings and connect it to the rest of your design, or use one end, make it a little bit larger of a loop, and put this at your clasp and make it, a button clasp with the leather loop. I really, really like to use leather with my Gollum beads, because it just really kind of helps me to not have to overthink how to stabilize the bead. But again, it does take a little extra patience to get your loops the right size and all of that. So if you want your loops to match. Sometimes I don't care if my loops match or not, but right. Obviously my loops are 2 different sizes, but if I were to work with this a little bit more, I could get this knot down closer, and I could get my loop larger or smaller so that it matches the loop on the other side. And again, you can tuck your ends into the bead if you want to. If you've got like a beading awl, that is definitely helpful. Try to get that knot as close as I possibly can, right? So now I have two loops. Yes, one of my loops is bigger than the other. I can use this side for a button, or I can work with it a little bit more to make my loops match. And now my bead is on a material that is definitely strong enough, and it's not going to wiggle around a whole lot, and you can tuck your ends in and pull it through and cut it off if you want to, or you can just trim it off right at the knot. And this works for other things too. You can use this with like hemp or thick cotton cord. It doesn't just have to be leather. I just like leather. I'm a leather kind of person. So I do like that as an option. Now, the last option that I have, and then we'll talk about what you guys' suggestions are. My last option is really just kind of simple, and that is just using a bead, right? Just using a bead that will fit into that hole. Not necessarily filling up the entire bead itself with other beads, but finding a bead that is the right size that fits right there in that little space. So, and sometimes it's a little trial and error trying to figure out what works, like what is the right size. So I'll find a little bead, doesn't have to be a metal bead, it can be a colored bead, whatever it is, and then see how it just kind of fits. It's still not perfect, but it's pretty darn close. And if you don't want, or you don't have seed beads, this is always a really nice option to use. And it definitely will stabilize, because if you push up against the Gollum bead enough, right, you're going to get it nice and secure. Does it look a little weird? Maybe, but from a distance, I don't think you're going to notice it. I think a lot of us are such perfectionists that we cannot accept these little things like this. Those little areas will drive you crazy. And then there are others of us that have kind of accepted that when you're working with a Gollum bead, that's just kind of the nature of the beast. And I really try to be that way about it, that it's just the way that it is. And I will accept it because it means I get to use such a beautiful, beautiful artisan piece in my designs. All right, now the last option is going to be wire, and we're going to do that. We're going to use wire to help to stabilize our bead in just a second, but I wanted to take a second to see if there are any other suggestions that you guys have. Is there something that maybe I haven't talked about that you guys recommend for stabilizing your Gollum beads? I know that some of you use the bugle beads. Those are nice. Some of you use like little rubber stoppers, like for your earrings. You can use, those little, they're just like little rubber backings that go onto your ear wires to keep your earrings in. Those are great because a lot of times those are clear and you can just slide those right down in there and really just kind of hides it. I love that idea. Any other ones? Do you guys have any others? What about a 3mm fire polish? Yes, I think a 3mm fire polish would absolutely work. Gina says tucking the ends is a great idea, right? With the leather, if you can, like if you're using a 3mm leather, you're probably going to have a harder time tucking that leather in there. But if you're using like a 2mm leather or a 1.5, you definitely have enough room to tuck that in there. And not only is that a nice option for hiding the ends, so you don't have to cut it off at the knot, but it also kind of helps to stabilize the bead so it doesn't roll around on the leather, which is awesome. So I love that idea. Let's see. Sharon says, this is such a great class. Yes, Jackie says a bicone. Bicones are great too. Let me see if I've got a bicone that we can use here. Bicones are nice because bicones are shaped the correct way, right? So you can, because a bicone is tapered. What is wrong with this one? I need to just throw that eye pin away. I don't know why I even had it still out here. But a bicone is shaped the right way because it's tapered. So that tapered part can fit into the opening of the bead, which is really, really nice. And again, you're still going to see the edge of that bead, like the cut of the hole. But it's still a really nice option to use for sure. Kimberly says, I got a bulk package of clear tubing in a Beadalon mystery box that I use to stabilize larger tube pendants. I bet that would work for the Gollum style beads as well. I love it. I love it. Marissa, she says silicone tubing. I love these ideas. And the cool part about the silicone tubing and the rubber tubing is that a lot of times it's clear. And if it's not, then it's probably black, which is just as invisible if we're being honest. So I think that's really cool. I love those ideas. I love it. I love it. You guys always have things that I don't even think about. So it's really cool when we can kind of group address problems like this, because I don't know everything. I will never claim to know everything. Okay, so I'm going to keep looking, but I am going to bring in some wire here because we are going to we're going to get this bead ready to go into our design, which is a pretty straightforward little project. But wire is always an option. So my suggestion for wire is to use the largest gauge wire that you're comfortable making a wrapped loop with. I'm always a 22 gauge person. I like to use 20 gauge for this situation though, but I didn't happen to have any in the color that I needed, which is this kind of stainless steel color just for my design, but that's fine. That's fine. It's still going to work the same way. But it's nice to use as thick as possible. In other words, I probably wouldn't grab for 24 gauge wire when you're working with a Gollum style bead for obvious reasons. The thinner the wire, the less stable things are going to be. But I'm going to take a piece of my wire here, and I'm going to take kind of a big wire. Silver silk, definitely. I think some of the thinner silver silks would work. Some of the thinner the capture chain for sure would look really nice, and I'm pretty sure would fit through there. All right, so I'm taking a little bit longer than normal piece of wire, and there's a reason for that, because I'm going to do the double up on my wrapped loop, where, you know, I've called it a lot of things, like it's chunky monkey, I've called it the slouchy sock. You guys know it's where I do a wrapped loop and then I go back over the wraps, and let me show you exactly what I mean. So I'm going to come down on my wire a little bit longer than I normally would. So I'm coming down at least 2.5 inches, maybe 3 inches is probably more like 3 inches on the wire. And I'm going to bend the wire. Chain definitely works. You can get some really pretty chains through this. Snake chain in particular looks gorgeous with your Gollum style beads. All right, now I'm going to do my loop. So I'm going to go up and over, rotate the pliers, take my wire over to the other side. And now I'm going to do my regular wire wraps. I'm going to do like 4. Okay, so there's 2, 3, and 4. Now I'm going to take this wire that I'm using to wrap, and I'm actually going to wrap back up over those wraps, going from the bottom to the top. And it's a little tricky to get it clean, but with a little bit of practice, or you can make it messy. Messy wraps are always a wonderful option as well, by the way. But see how I'm wrapping back over the wraps that I did? This really kind of thickens up the entire wrap. Just makes it a little bit more chunky, and that is hopefully going to fit pretty close to or inside of the hole of my bead. So I'm going to come in with my cutter tool, trim that off. Okay, and now I'm going to thread on. Oh, hold on. I'm going to thread on my Gollum style bead. Okay, sorry, I was having to deal with something. Now, you can see the wire wraps. If I can wiggle just a little, see how I just pulled on it just slightly, and it just sent those wraps right in there. Now, a single wrap is not going to be enough. That's going to rattle around inside there, but that double chunky monkey wrap is just enough to fill in that hole. And now I have a wrapped loop that I can use to connect this to anything, right? So I need to do the same thing over here on the other side. So I'm going to come in with my pliers, and when I'm grabbing the wire, notice that I am grabbing at an angle. So instead of grabbing the wire flush where I am at the edge of the bead, I'm actually grabbing the wire with my pliers at an angle down inside the hole of that bead. And then I'm bending the wire over the top of the pliers, right? Because we're trying to fill in that space. And if I do it up here, it's just going to create extra space for the bead to wiggle around. Okay, so now I come in with my round nose pliers, and I'm kind of holding them off to the side because I can't get my round nose pliers in the right spot. Not yet, at least. All right, so I'm going up and over, rotate, take the wire over to the other side. Now when I do my wire wraps, I'm actually going to be wrapping down inside this curved area, so I have to be careful and go slow. But I'm going to wrap down, and I may need to, you know, kind of manipulate the wire a little bit, which is fine because it's wire. It's going to do what I want it to do. But see how, all right, now I'm going to wrap back up over those wraps. And I may not get a full 4 wraps in like I did before, and that's fine. It doesn't make any difference to me as long as it's stable. See how it's stable and just my wire is sticking out just a little bit on both sides? I'm totally fine with that. Looks good. This bead is not rocking around on that wire, and I know that I've got a nice secure bead here that I can use those 2 loops to connect to whatever I need to connect it to. And I can turn those loops if I need to so that they're both facing the direction that I want. And there you go. I love that. I think that's great. It is a nice, stable connection. You guys know I'm a wire person. This is perfect for me for my design. But it is all about doubling up the wire wrap, because if you don't, and you just do a single wire wrap and you don't chunky monkey it, don't make it double the size, this bead is still going to rock around on that. So just know that that extra wrap really makes a big, big difference. Okay. So now we are going to turn this into an actual project, because I couldn't just get together with you and not actually put together a nice little piece of jewelry. So we're going to create a bracelet. It has a cluster. I did the cluster in advance. If you need to see how to put together clusters, definitely check out some of my other projects where we've done the clusters, but this one was already ready for me. So just kind of cheating there a little bit. I do have some dangles, some little charms. I've got a nice little magnetic clasp that I'm going to use here for my project. All right, we are going to do some stringing and some wire wrapping. So this has got a little bit of both. I'm going to wire wrap this little bead next to this bead with some bead caps. So I'm going to take another wire, and just to keep this balanced visually, I'm going to chunky monkey wrap this bead as well, even though it doesn't need it. But just to keep the wire visually balanced, I'm going to double up those wire wraps for this bead. So let me show you. And I'm going to wire wrap it directly to that bead. So bending my wire, coming in with my round nose pliers, up and over, rotate, take the wire over to the other side before I wrap. I'm going to slide that into that loop. So I'm just putting those 2 together, no jumping in between there. Okay. Now I'm going to use my bent chain nose pliers to hold that loop, and I'm going to wire wrap. Okay. And then I'm going to come back over those wraps, even though I don't need it, just so that this matches the other bead, right? So I don't need that big chunky wide wrap, because this is not a large hole bead, but it just visually is nice and balancing to the eye, instead of having this chunky wrap and then this skinny little wrap. The skinny little wrap all of a sudden looks like it's not strong, even though the bead doesn't need it. So All right, threading on my bead cap, then my bead, and then my bead cap, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so when I wire wrap again, I'm going to thicken it up, even though it doesn't need it, but it's going to make everything look cohesive. So, chain nose pliers coming in with my round nose pliers. All right, up and over, rotate, take the wire over to the other side, wire wrap, and then back up over those wraps. And then I'm going to trim. So you can see how it all just really is much more balanced that way. All right, so now, oh no, I forgot that I was actually going to wire wrap my bead directly to my clasp. Bummer. Do I want to use a jump ring there? I really don't want to use a jump ring there. So you know what we're going to do? Everybody hide your eyes. We're going to do this again. I know those wraps looked great, but I forgot. So I'm going to trim this all off. We're going to do it again, which is fine because you get to see it again. So just in case anybody is not super familiar with doing the double wire wraps like that, you can see it again. Do over. All right. So again, coming down on the wire a little bit further than normal, just to give myself the extra wire that I need to double those wraps, because it does take more wire to wrap over the wraps that you've already created. So don't try to do this if you're using your regular amount of wire that you normally use just for 3 wraps, because it's just not going to be enough. It's okay to start over, Wanda. Wanda missed the whole class part of this. Wanda's just getting to see the project. Wanda, you missed all of we played with leather. You missed all of that. That's okay though. That's what replays are for. All right, so I'm wrapping back upwards, right, over the wraps. Sad trombone indeed, Wanda. All right. So now I'm going to trim. Okay. Thread on. All right. And now I'm going to do that chunky monkey business again. But this time let's slow down and remember. Oh, thank you, Diane. I appreciate your support so much. That means so much to me. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to thread on my clasp. You are going to have to watch the replay because we talked all about how you can deal with large hole beads, particularly Gollum style and other ceramics, because they don't behave the same way other beads do. So we looked at a bunch of different methods for how to make those work in your designs. And leather was just one of our options. All right, so there, no jump rings, right? I just connecting everything directly to each other. All right, so this is what we've got so far. Okay. All right, now we are going to get our bead stringing wire out. We are going to string up some beads here. I have these peach colored quartz beads that I'm going to use. So let's grab some bead stringing wire, because really this live was more about the Gollum beads than it was about the clasp part. So the project here is just good inspiration, but this is not a hard project. This is just eye candy. It's just pretty, you know? So grab myself a crimp. Two crimps. This is in fact the second closing of Beadaholic. All right, crimp bead going on, wire guardian. Terry says, do you have any thoughts on antique glass donut beads? I'm just unaware of how to deal with them. They are maybe a dime to nickel sized. I would love to see a picture of those because I'm having a hard time like a donut bead, right? Like the big like gemstone donut beads, but smaller. Is that what you're saying? They're just glass? Interesting. I'm not sure, but I do know that if you use a larger bead cap on something like here, let me crimp first, and then I'm gonna pull out something that might be helpful. I don't know, or I could be completely off base, but all right. So making sure my wires are not crisscrossing. Grab my crimper tool here. All right. So I've got that crimped on there, and now let's look for a second here. Let me see if I know that this is not the same thing. Okay, I know obviously this is not the same, and obviously the hole for this is nowhere near the right size. Hold on, I've got a better example here. So thinking about like the hole size, maybe similar to like a European style bead. I know this is nowhere near as big of a hole, but what if, hold on, I bet I have one that I can use as an example. Or I don't, because I have no idea what I did with all those. But what if you could find a bead cap that was large enough, pretending like this is one of those donut beads with a big old hole in it, much bigger than this, right? But what if you could find a large bead cap that could sit in that space, potentially upside down like that, like a cup? It might take a really large bead cap, but that might be enough if you wanted to string a donut on like a bead. Otherwise, you can wire wrap it like a briolette, or you can thread through it and tie it. You know what I mean? I really would kind of have to see, but I'm thinking that you could most definitely have it front facing like a regular donut bead and wire wrap it, you know, and then connect it to something, or thread it on and then tie a knot. So I'm thinking there are some ways to deal with it. It really just kind of depends on how you want to incorporate that into your project. So I don't know. I think that would be an interesting project. I want to see if you've got a picture though of what they look like. That might kind of help me figure it out a little bit better. So it is definitely, I don't like to talk about these things a lot because I don't like to bring our comment section down, but Wanda does bring up a good point. Goody Beads gone, Beadaholic gone, Kelly's Bead Boutique gone, Joanne's is gone, Trying Times for Crafters. And then remember, we already had lost AC Moore, which was a while ago, but it's rough. Yeah, I don't like it, but let me, just so that a lot of you, I don't think realize this, and maybe I shouldn't say this out loud, but just so that you guys are aware, Goody Beads and Beadaholic belong to Art Beads. So it's all one entity. So whatever you are going to lose from Goody Beads and Beadaholic, whatever inventory is left will move over to Art Beads. So I don't know if that will help you at all, but just so that you are aware, it is all owned by one company and the inventory will commingle with each other. So whatever is left from Beadaholic will eventually become inventory on Art Beads. I don't know if that helps you or not, but just so you're aware. And the same is true with Goody Beads and rings and things. It's all the same umbrella. So, all right. So I'm going to thread on one bead cap. Okay, so I'm just putting one bead cap on, but then I'm going to thread on all of my beads. And this is a kind of a cute little way to incorporate a bead cap that maybe you only have 2 of, but you got a lot of beads, but you still want that fun bead cap on there. So I just put the bead caps on the ends. Wanda said I wasn't going to say it. Well, but I don't want people to just like lose their minds over it and think, oh my gosh, you know. I just want you guys to know that like the inventory is not disappearing. Now, if it sells out and it's gone, it's probably gone, but the rest of it will make its way over to the Art Beads website and will be there. So just if that gives you any kind of sense of peace out of the situation. And don't forget, guys, things can happen. Remember, Tierra Cast was going to close. Remember, Tierra Cast closed their doors and then another company bought them. And so we still get to have access to Tierra Cast. So just remember that there are always a million possibilities for what could happen. So I know that it's sad and it makes us uneasy as consumers, but understand that in the industry, there's a lot more going on than what you guys on your side get to see. So just know that a lot of things can change and a lot of things can happen. So try not to get too discouraged, I guess is what I'm saying. All right, bead cap on the end. So you can see bead cap here, bead cap here. I don't have enough bead caps to do all of them, but for me, it's just the right amount of metal. Okay, so I'm threading on my crimp, my wire guardian. Hi, Lisa. Up through my wire guardian, down through my wire guardian, and then down through my crimp. And I'm going to bring all that down. Okay. And then I'm going to put that into my crimper tool. Give that a squeeze. Turn that sideways. Give that a squeeze. And then come in with my cutter to trim off. All right. So this is what I've got so far. Right. And my clasp is here. So if you're waiting on me to put on the clasp, don't forget, this is the clasp. Right. So what I'm going to do next is just incorporate my big fabulous cluster here that I have. And as I mentioned, I'm not going to put the cluster together. It was already pre-created. But if you need to see how to put together clusters, I definitely have a lot of projects where I go step by step through the cluster process. But these are beautiful Hessonite beads, little faceted babies that I love, all linked together with some 4mm jump rings. And I am going to open up this top jump ring here. And I'm going to connect that to my Gollum bead and then my wire guardian on the other side. Close that back. All right, now that's not enough for me because I'm extra. So I have more charms. I have a little daisy charm and I have a little butterfly, and I do want to attach those as well. So I'm going to attach my butterfly to the top of my cluster here. actually just to the side of my cluster, so it will kind of hang on the front. And then I'm going to add on, you can see how that's gonna hang right in there, right? And then I'm gonna attach this guy. Now, I originally wanted to attach this over here. However, this is a magnet and the jump ring kept getting stuck to the magnet, so it wouldn't hang correctly. The charm itself is sterling silver, so that wasn't an issue, but the jump ring was not. And so I had to settle with putting this over here, which is fine. I'm okay with it, but the magnets on your clasps sometimes can really dictate where things are going to go, because they do have a tendency to just grab on to things that are not sterling silver and other base metals. The base metals are what it sticks to. So there you go. There's my bracelet. And I know it's a lot. Some people don't like the clusters and all the hangy doodads. I love all the hangy doodads. They make me very, very happy. But the most important part was our Gollum style bead here is nice and secure. It's not wiggling around on that wire. I had 2 wrapped loops on the ends, so it made it easy for me to connect to things. And just one of many ways that you can use your Gollum style beads, right? Remember, you can always use leather. You can use seed beads. It's a really nice alternative if you don't want to add leather to your design, though this would have worked here, right? That would have been really pretty to put in with the leather. But lots of choices. I hope that I have given you guys some inspiration and some help when it comes to dealing with your large hole ceramics, because they don't work the same way other beads do, other large hole beads, simply because of the dip that is created by the drill hole. So I know that can be challenging, but hopefully I've given you guys some options, some food for thought when it comes to creating with these, and you'll be able to be a little bit more confident when you are creating with them. All right. All right. Sharon says, without the Gollum bead, it would break. It would make a great purse charm for one of your mini bags. I know. Every time I make something, I'm like, ooh, purse charm. Ooh, I could dangle that from my cell phone. Oh, I could attach that to my back. Like, yes, I know. But yeah, you're right. The Gollum beads, they're pretty strong, but a purse is way different than a bracelet. You know what I mean? Like my purses, I love my purses. I really love bags, but I also am very hard on them, like I am everything else. And I feel like it would get knocked around. So you're absolutely right about that. All right, I'm going to turn you guys around. I hope that you guys have enjoyed today's class or live or whatever you want to, however you want to call it. I think this was definitely falls into the category of class, because we really kind of talked a lot about different ways that you can really stabilize these fabulous beads that sometimes people get them and then do not know how to make them work. And I even saw somebody in the comment section say, when I got one, I thought it was broken, and it's just because of the way that drill hole sits. So it can be a challenge, and hopefully I've helped a little bit. I hope. All right, friends, thank you so much. I hope that you have enjoyed, and I can't wait to see what you do. If you create some designs with these beautiful Gollum style beads using some of the techniques that we talked about today, please don't hesitate to post those in our Facebook group so that we can see them, because I love to see what you guys are doing, and so does everybody else. All right. Okay. So I'm out of here. I will be back with you on Friday at 1 p.m. for our Feel Good Friday show, and then 4 p.m. over on artbeads.com for that show. If you are a Hardwired member, you are meeting with me today at 4 p.m. We are putting together a macrame necklace that has a beautiful net front. It is going to be a 2-part class, going to take a minute to do, but I think the results are going to be very pleasing. So I'm looking forward to that. The rest of you guys have a great rest of your afternoon, and I will see you soon. Bye, guys.